Now we'll look at some commonly used vocabulary, which you will find useful for graphs such as these. I'll start by talking about each of these words. I'll define it to tell you what it means, give you an example of how it's used in a sentence, and then I'll give you some alternative words which you could use instead, some synonyms, so you don't keep repeating the same words all the time. Go up is a phrase which means to rise in level, amount, or value. For example, the graph shows that prices went up, and you should know that went up is past tense of the word go, dramatically last year. Remember how I told you, always make sure that you're talking about not just what happened, but how much it happened by adding an adjective to your noun, or in this case, an adverb to your verb. Now, there's another way of doing this. Instead of using a low-level verb like go or went, and then having to add an adverb to it, like dramatically, in order to talk about how big the change was, you could use some high-level vocabulary, which not only talks about a change, but at the same time talks about how big that change was. So instead of saying that prices went up dramatically, we could say they soared. Soared is a useful verb because it doesn't just mean go up, it means went up very high. Or we could say they rocketed, which means they not only went up very high, but this change happened very quickly. So it's a good idea to use high-level vocabulary with other meaning built in. So instead of just using a verb, you can use a verb with an adverb idea built into it. Then you don't have to use an adverb with the verb. And not only will this make your writing more efficient, but obviously it's going to be easier to read. And on any essay task, it will score more highly. The next word is grow, which means to increase in size, quantity, or degree over time. For example, the company's revenue grew steadily from 2015 to 2020. Notice, as usual, when we use the verb grow, we modify it with an adverb. So we say how much it is growing. Remember this pattern, which you'll hear me repeat a lot, that we talk about what happens, here using the verb, then how much it happens, here using an adverb. Then we talk about when it happens, in this case, the time period 2015 to 2020. There are other ways of saying grew steadily. You could use another verb phrase, for example, ramped gradually. Ramped is a useful word, which means went up. Like grow, it doesn't say how much, so you can modify it with another verb like gradually, which here means the same as steadily. Likewise, instead of saying grew steadily, you could say climbed consistently. Climbed is a verb which also has the same idea as grew, and consistently is an adverb which has the same idea as steadily. So you can vary this vocabulary, change the words with these phrases which have the same idea in order to give yourself a little bit more vocabulary and some different variety. Next, increase, which just means a rise in the quantity or degree of something. It's more general. For example, there was a significant increase in the number of visitors in 2019. And here again, we can see not only do we have our noun, but we have our adjective. We talk about what happened, an increase, and we talk about how much, significant increase. Finally, we have the simple word rise, which means generally to move from a lower position to a higher one. So you can use this to talk about figures increasing or sales going up. For example, the sales figures have continued to rise over the past 3 quarters. Continued is useful because it means that this is still happening. And then, of course, notice we are using some time information. However, we could improve the level of detail in this description by inserting an adverb after the word rise. If the rise is slow, then we could say continued to rise gradually. If the rise is fast, we could say continued to rise rapidly. But again, always talk about not just what is happening, but how much it is happening.